So dive right in. We have a project in our current capital improvement plan for 2026 for this stretch of Zollinger Road. The basic project is a resurfacing project with spot curb replacement. The information you see there on the side, that we rate pavements, it's called a PCR. It's a pavement condition rating. The last time this was done, we do this every 2 years. In 2020, it had a rating of 83, and that's out of 100. And the curb had a rating of 3, which is out of 5. And those are kind of, it's hard to follow sometimes, but those are in reverse order. For the pavement, 100 is the best, and for the curb, 1 is the best. So keep that in mind as we're talking about it. The average around the city is a PCR of 90 and a curb of 2. So in both cases, this stretch is a little below what the average is. The numbers aren't horrible, as you can see, but we're also looking at a project that's a few years away. And so it's obviously just going to continue to go down from there. Since we have this project in our budget, we want to look at, are there other things that we should consider? One thing that is on the table to discuss and consider is bikeway facilities. This stretch of roadway has been identified by MORPC as an important east-west connector for bikes. And so that's something we want to talk about. We'll get into that a little bit more. And we think that this would be a good project to apply and receive funding through MORPC, which would obviously help out our budget. So to start that, even though the construction isn't for several years, we have to start that process now. And so before we actually get into that process, we wanted to reach out to the residents in the community and discuss the project and hear from you and get your input. Just going to kind of list some of what we see as kind of a typical concerns on a roadway like this that, like I said, we want your input on. Speeding is a typical concern on a 4-lane roadway like this. We hear that concern a lot, and so that's a common thing. Accidents, if you guys from your perspective are seeing an accident problem on the corridor, we're definitely aware of the concerns at the Zollinger and Reading intersection. So that's an intersection we definitely want to look at with this project. We've made some improvements there over the last couple of years. We put on backplates on the signals to make them more visible. We've added additional signal heads on the pole. It seems to be at least improving the situation. The accidents, as we track that, seem to be trending in the right direction, but we want to continue to monitor that. And with this project, really take a hard look at that intersection and are there other improvements that would help? And so that's a specific accident location that we know of and want to look into. Another typical one is pedestrian crossings. There again, when you're crossing a 4-lane undivided road, that's a long way for a pedestrian to cross when vehicles aren't stopping. So, that's something we're open to looking into and want your feedback on. And then, as I mentioned, biking and active transportation. Is that an issue that you guys see or that you would like the city to look at as this project moves forward? Want to just give a couple just brief overview of some what I guess I would call typical projects to address speeding concerns or bike concerns or pedestrian crossings. It's typically done with what is called a road diet, and so these are just some options for that. I want to be clear as we're looking at all this stuff, no decisions have been made on what this project will be. The only guarantee is that we're going to resurface the road and we're going to do some spot curb and gutter replacement. That we're definitely going to do. But since we're doing that, we want to have the discussion of, is there something more we should do? Is there something the residents would like us to look at? So I want to just kind of show these to you. You see right in the top middle there, that's kind of a before and after, and that's kind of I guess you could say in an engineer's perfect world where we had plenty of pavement, which we don't have here. We don't have this width. We don't have the right of way width. But you know, if we did, this would be the if we could have, you know, traffic in each direction. We could have accommodations for bikes, dedicated accommodations, and we could have parking on both sides. The left, you see, you know, something that would probably fit more with the available pavement width that we have out there. But obviously one downside there is it doesn't accommodate parking. And you know, we want to hear from you of, you know, your concerns. Is parking a concern that you guys are having out there? So, you know, we want to know about that. On the lower right is an example where there aren't bike lanes. Then it kind of does the same road diet, which does help with traffic, but doesn't add or take away parking for bikes. And if you wanted to accommodate bikes, you could look at a shared use path that's outside of the roadway, or you could look at installing a sharrow, which is just pavement markings to allow the bikes to be in the same traffic as the vehicles. So this is a kind of a typical thing that's explored, especially when you're talking about speeding concerns. When you reduce the number of lanes like this, it's pretty much always shown, the studies have shown that does reduce the speeds along the corridor. It tightens up the roadway so people don't feel like they've got a runway that they're driving on, and so they feel a little more restricted. Generally, you see a decrease in crashes because you get the left turning vehicles out of the way of the through traffic. And so that kind of improves both the speeding and the safety. And as you see on the lower right-hand side, it also, from a pedestrian standpoint, reduces that crossing width across the road. And so rather than having to cross 4 lanes of traffic, a pedestrian only has to cross 3. So it cuts down that crossing distance quite a bit. So just want to discuss, you know, it might be a question of why is there this discussion of bikeways or bike accommodations? As I mentioned, MORPC identified this corridor as an important east-west connector. This is from the MORPC Ohio, or excuse me, the Central Ohio Greenways Plan. And so that's what identified this stretch. So we wanted to look at it and consider it and see if it's possible. To be clear, you know, we obviously understand that we have limited right of way, which limits our options, and you know, we understand that. And I don't know if we can even accommodate bikes, but we wanted to do our due diligence, which includes looking at it and hearing from the residents of, you know, what's important to you on this corridor. You know, are bikes important to you? And you know, if they were made, if there was a desire and we did move forward with bikes, you know, what option do you guys see as the best for you folks who live on the corridor? Just wanted to show some examples of different bike options. You see right in the middle is that's the sharrow marking that I referenced, which is simply pavement marking within the travel lane for vehicles. You have, you know, a wider sidewalk or a shared use path that can be put in. There's also dedicated bike lanes. Dedicated bike lanes on this stretch, admittedly, would be difficult because it would remove all parking. That's again where we want to hear from you guys. But I foresee that one as being a challenge because it would have to take parking out of the area. Also just shows a picture on the lower right, you know, if we went with sharrows, that it would accommodate parking potentially, and again would reduce that crossing across the roadway. So that helps with the pedestrian environment as well. But we also want to just hear from you guys of anything else you might be thinking of. You know, I've mentioned parking several times. You know, the tree canopy is important to a lot of people. Is that a concern that you have with existing trees or desire for new trees? Street lighting, you know, is that something the residents would like to see on this corridor? And so those are all things that we'd like to hear from you on, or any other issue. We have some time to explore these things. As I mentioned with the schedule, you know, we're not going to be in construction for a couple of years. So that's why we're having this conversation now. Just a quick overview. We're in the very early stages of the project. We haven't started design. We'll be hiring a consultant to do that design, which we haven't even gotten to that yet. So we don't have a consultant on board. So we're in the very preliminary stage of wanting to hear from the residents. And we want to hear from you before any decisions are made. As I mentioned, we haven't made any decisions. Nothing is final on this project other than new pavement and curb and gutter, but let's talk about some other things that could be done and could be important to the residents. As I mentioned, now is the time when we need to submit to MORPC. This is called their pre-screening application, which means this is just the very initial application to them to get their feedback on whether or not this is a viable project for them to assist in funding. So it doesn't lock us into the scope. It doesn't lock us into exactly what the project has to be. It's a reading from them on yes or no of how this project would score at an official submission to potentially get funding. So that's happening, you know, now here soon. And then, you know, we get that on MORPC's plate. Hopefully they provide some funding for this. As I mentioned, construction is scheduled for 2026 and design will start in 2024. So that's why, as I mentioned, we have some time to have this conversation and want to hear from you guys. So as I said, I didn't have a long presentation, but that we really wanted to hear from you guys. And there too, there's Mandy's email again. If you want to email questions, or if you think of something later and want to email it, you can email Mandy. I can tell you right now, you'll get an out of office because she's out for a couple days, but she'll be back next week, and we'll respond to any questions you guys have. So that would also, when you email Mandy, she will get you on our list for this project. So going forward, any focus-ons or any information we distribute, we can email that to you as the project moves forward. So I'll turn it over. I think I've seen a few things come in the chat box. So Carla, if you can jump on here and let me know if there's any questions.
Yeah, so as Gary mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, we're going to start with some of the questions and conversation that's starting in the chat box. And then if there's time, I'll ask Gary and we can decide if we will take speakers. And at that point, I'll explain to each speaker the process in order to get in line. But in the chat box, the very first question that popped up was the intersection of Riverside Drive and Zollinger. They wanted to know if there are any plans there for a signal, and it looks like at least one other resident pointed out maybe there could be a right turn only option. They want to know what we're exploring there.
We're not specifically looking at anything with this project, but as the project moves forward, I do anticipate working and having conversations with ODOT and the City of Columbus, who control that intersection. So while the project doesn't include anything, I anticipate those conversations continuing with them. I think they are aware of those concerns, but we'll continue to have those conversations.
Great. They're looking for a little bit more information on whether or not trees and or sidewalks will be removed as a part of this project.
We're not planning on that. I don't anticipate that. I guess with a sidewalk, you know, if we heard from you guys and there was a desire for a wider sidewalk to accommodate bikes, then obviously we would, you know, replace what was there. But as I mentioned, the primary focus and the only guarantee is the new pavement and the curbs. Beyond that is the conversation we're having of desires for more than that. But sitting here today, we aren't, nothing like that is planned. But that conversation ties into exactly what we're talking about.
Are there any considerations for a pedestrian bridge across Riverside Drive? Maybe a tunnel?
Maybe a tunnel. Unfortunately, no. I know that has come up. I think it's come up at a couple locations along Riverside, but unfortunately, no. That's nothing that's being considered.
Is this project the replacement for any part of Lane Avenue or connections to the Quarry Trail?
Nope, this is completely separate. This is something that's been in, I guess, Carla, I don't know, it's been in our capital improvement program for a couple of years that this has been planned. So this is completely separate, not planned to replace or anything with that.
Yep. All right, Aaron, did I miss any of the questions that are in the chat box?
Going through those now, actually. I'll pipe up if I see anything specific.
Because I was reading, sorry, I was reading the questions as everybody was, I can see there's still chat going on.
Gotcha, yeah. So Gary, another one here for you. Any thoughts on adding a red light camera at Zollinger and Reading?
Zollinger and Reading, possibly. I guess I don't, at that intersection, like I said, we definitely want to explore options there. And I by no means want to go into that exploration saying anything's off the table. So that could possibly be looked at. I think with the red light camera, we would have to look. I'm not sure if your question is regarding enforcement and ticketing for that. I'm not sure where that stands from a legal perspective. I know there was some issues with that in the past, so I would obviously have to look at that. But big picture is I'm not going into it with any preconceived notion that anything is or isn't off the table.
The only other one was that I've seen so far is what did we learn from our McCoy Road project and how will that be applied here?
I guess, Carla, I would defer to you a little bit on that one. I wasn't here then. I've only been here since February, so maybe Carla can answer that one.
Yeah, with the McCoy Road project, another 4-lane road in Upper Arlington, one of the things we did during the design process was have a public meeting just like this. And we pitched the idea of having a road diet, a lane reduction. And we had some people in favor, but we had some very vocal people that were against it. There were a lot of concerns about people losing parking. And there were a lot of concerns about having bicyclists on the street. So in order to improve the speeding concerns that we had there, as well as some of the safety concerns, we decided to do curb bump outs, or the curb extensions that Gary had mentioned could potentially be an option in order to slow down traffic. And then that provided some dedicated parking. Just like that project, those are going to be things that we're going to talk to our design team about as we move forward with Zollinger. All right, Gary, it looks like
I just found one question. It's in the after a sentence. So someone asked if we've considered a study of how often the outside lanes are currently being used for parking. We have not done that. That is something we've discussed as we go forward. That's information we want to know. And so that's, as we move forward into design, that's information we'll collect. That will help guide any decisions as well as understanding how that curb lane is used. So good question.
The only other one I've seen here, Gary, is have we given any consideration for runoff water and snow clearing? I assume that is referencing the change to either one of those, depending on what we do for this roadway.
Yeah, as far as the drainage is concerned, stormwater drainage, when we have the design consultant on board, typically they look at the catch basin locations to see if they have the proper spread. And if we change the roadway in any way that would impact that, we would consider making changes. But at this point in time, we do not have stormwater improvements planned for Zollinger. But certainly if there is an area that you are concerned about, please let us know. That's what this meeting is for.
And not just the meeting, you can email as well. That's fine too. If that's all the questions, I did see one person say he wanted to speak. Carla, if you want to unmute him.
Yeah, I will. I'll start with Mr. I believe Rome. And right now we have this set up just so everybody knows, if you're familiar with Zoom or not, we have it set up so that you can unmute yourself and you can't turn your video on. So if you've never used the raise your hand feature, when you're looking at the screen, hopefully you were able to find the chat box, but at the bottom of your screen, there should be a hand like this, and it says raise hand. So go ahead and you can put your hand up, and we will try to capture the people in order if they want to speak, but we'll go ahead and start with Mr. Rome. So hopefully you can hear me. I'm going to ask you to unmute, and then you'll have to push the unmute button yourself. Go ahead, Mr. Rome.
Yeah, I'm actually Bob Ream. I'm glad.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Well, you wouldn't know that from the name. I lived on Zollinger Road for 49 years near Kyoka, and I'm a former bicycle rider hit by a truck with a traumatic brain injury. I cannot legally or safely drive. Following the chat is an issue for me because of vision limitations. I have several focuses, but the thing that I want to talk about particularly is the completely unique intersection design of Tremont and Zollinger. People are often driving me to Hilliard and I say, okay, the sign is hidden, but you cannot drive straight through in the left lane. You have to be in the right lane, but the sign itself is hidden by a tree. So you don't know that you have to go in the right lane to go westbound on Zollinger. Typically the destination then is Reading Road, north to Fishinger and across, but there's no stop sign, there's no light at Fishinger, and Tremont and 33 in Zollinger is incredibly unsafe. So it's a challenge. I'm hoping that Fishinger, I'm hoping that Tremont and Zollinger intersection will be reconsidered. Why there need to be 3 eastbound lanes and 1 westbound lane, and that completely odd intersection design. That I have several concerns, but that's probably the most important one I want to raise.
Okay, we'll look at it. We'll definitely look at it. I think that's if you're seeing, I definitely put that in a safety concern you have, and that's what we want to hear. And as we get going, and as I think Carla mentioned, once we get the design consultant on board, those are the types of things we'll have them look at for sure.
You said that was your number one concern. Was there something else you wanted to ask, Mr.
Oh,
Payne?
I just want to mention, I'm a member of the Morpsey community. So we hear proposals like the Fishinger proposal. I think we heard Henderson before that. Our committee is 3 tiers down from the top. We don't have the power to actually make the decision, but we can make feedback. And then the feedback goes to a middle group and then to the final group that actually decides whether Upper Arlington gets Zollinger Road construction. Yeah, that Zollinger and 33. I think it's Perry Township, not Columbus, but that's not the purpose of this conversation. That's
You could be right. You could be right on that. I didn't confirm that, but yeah.
I have some friends at McCoy and 33 who can never get the traffic light fixed because they have to call Perry Township and Perry Township doesn't respond. But that's aside compared to this.
Unfortunately, I don't have the power to make them respond.
Thank you for hearing me.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? I haven't seen a new message for a couple minutes. So I'll do one more.
There's a hand.
Yep, Andrea.
Andrea, all right. I will ask you to unmute and then you'll have to select unmute.
Okay, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm sure I don't have anything else to add that anybody hasn't brought up already. I just am in a unique position in that I live at the corner of Reading and Zollinger. So we get action from both sides. We've been first on the scene for some of the accidents that happen out there. And some nights we just sit and scream out from our driveway to please slow down. Or some nights we just count how many people run the red lights. And if it's a lot, we'll call the non-emergency line and let them know that there's a plethora of people running red lights. So for some reason, it just seems to be such a dangerous intersection, which is a bummer because we have so many small kids that live in the neighborhood. So anything that can be done to slow down the traffic, but then also add some space for children to go out and safely ride their bikes would be really amazing.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. And like I said, that intersection is definitely on our radar. It's only been within the last maybe 3 weeks that we did pull the accident history and really started taking a deep dive into what's going on out there. And as I mentioned, we have done some stuff, but that doesn't mean that we've done some stuff and are walking away. It's still on our radar, and we plan on continuing to look at it and also look at it with this project as well. So I appreciate your feedback.
Yeah, well, glad to hear it. I appreciate everything you guys are doing. Just want to let you know I'm always available to give information and insight since we see so much activity at the corner.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Janine.
This is Ken using Janine's computer.
Okay.
Sorry, Ken.
Hi, Ken.
Don't tell her. I'm a longtime resident here on Zollinger Road, and I noticed just recently that the traffic light at Cimarron and Zollinger was put onto more of a full cycle, timed cycle, as opposed to changes to red when someone pushes the button there for the school crossing. I'm wondering if that's going to be permanent, and I'm wondering if that has an influence on slowing down traffic.
You said that was at Cimarron and Zollinger?
Cimarron and Zollinger.
Okay.
It seems to be having an effect on the speed, the fast speed. People are able to drive all the way from Reading to all the way to the River Road or all the way to Cuyahoga without stopping unless a pedestrian presses the crossing button.
Okay. I'll have to look into that for you. If you can email Mandy the email that you see on your screen, and let us know that that's the intersection you're asking about, and we'll follow up.
I'm just curious because if that was not intended to be a way of controlling speed, it certainly might be something you would consider because it seems to be effective from the view from my front porch.
Okay.
And it kind of relates to before your time, we had a traffic signal at Mount View. And that was removed. And I don't recall as many accidents at Reading Road before that signal was removed. And it made it more convenient to speed down through Zollinger Road.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
just so you know, we don't have the engineering coordinators are not mic'd up for this presentation, but they sent a message since Cimarron was part of our street reconstruction project. We currently have that light on bypass. We don't have it on a radar detection, but we were planning on putting that back. But we can take a look at it and see if any improvements could be made there.
Right, well, it just seemed interesting, and we were kind of wondering if that was going to be permanent, because it does seem to be slowing people down, because it cycles to red. I don't know that it's on any kind of a detection system, radar or otherwise. It just alternates to red if there's, periodically red, green cycling, even if there's no traffic there.
Okay,
Right.
thank you.
Thank you, Ken.
I thought I saw a couple hands come up, Carla.
Yep, I see one more. I'm just trying to lower them as I go.
Okay.
Lauren Engel. Lauren, it looks like you're unmuted, but I can't hear you. Oh, here, go ahead and try again.
Should we come back to Lauren? Were there two hands raised? I thought I saw two hands.
Are there two? I'm sorry, Lauren. I'm not sure why your volume isn't coming through. Yeah, here, I'll try it one more time. Go ahead and unmute. I'm sorry. Definitely reach out with your comment or question, or you can write it in the chat box. And I'm looking to see, I don't see any other hands up other than Lauren. Oh, we do not. I see the only, I will read Lauren's comment that's in the chat box just in case people didn't see it. Maybe that's what Lauren wanted to share. They put, we do not need 4 lanes. There's only a backup or a clog when school bus or a similar block or something similar blocks traffic flow. Otherwise, we would be fine with 2 lanes for cars.
Okay.
Sorry, Lauren, but please share with us if there's more that you were hoping to add to the conversation.
Okay. If there isn't anybody else, I'll do one last call here before we let you guys go. I want to thank everybody again for getting on this. We really appreciate it. This is an important project that we have coming up in the next couple years. Since design won't start for a while, there's definitely going to be a stretch where not much, you won't hear much going on, but it still will be in the pipeline and continue going forward. So please email Mandy. And any comments, suggestions, recommendations. And I see Lauren just has a question. No parked car crashes. Have you seen how many? I don't have that number. I don't know if Carla or Aaron, if you know of any parked car crashes.
If they're reported, we can ask police what the history is over the past 3 to 5 years, but I don't have a number.
That is a number, going forward as decisions are made. That's a number we'll definitely have. What we would want to have that as we make decisions. Okay, you've seen 3 in the past year. Okay, that's good to know. So yeah, that's something. Just as I mentioned earlier with the number of cars that are parking, those are things that we'll continue to look into as we go forward and continue to discuss with you guys. So anything else? Carla, am I missing anything? Anything we need to add?
No, we appreciate you guys figuring out how to get on here from our focus on notice. If people were not able to join us for this meeting, we did record all but maybe the first slide. You may have all heard the record button start, but we can share this on the website as well as the presentation at the exact location that we shared for this meeting invite.
So thank you, and we look forward to working with you going forward.